Good morning, everyone. If you're like me and over the age of 6, you surely remember the cultural behemoth that Game of Thrones became in the late 20-teens. If you followed the series even loosely, you surely remember the massive backlash over the complete mishandling of the series' conclusion, as well as its almost instantaneous fall from grace as one of pop culture's darlings. I can't think of anything else I've seen have such a grip on the world, only to completely squander its goodwill and become almost entirely irrelevant only a few years later. We're still talking about The Sopranos all these years later, but I no longer see cars on the road with House Stark window decals. I don't see poorly groomed men piddling around the Walmart wearing shirts that say, "I drink and I know things." And it's been years since I've heard anyone make the iconic "winter's coming" joke in the autumnal months of the year. To many, it's like it was never there at all. And I understand that type of disappointment. I was one of the people who had the officially licensed 100% polyester official Game of Thrones official house banner flags hanging up in his bedroom for like years. Can you imagine how that went? Bringing women home and one of the first things they see of my room is just a wall covered in Game of Thrones flags? Pretty well, actually. Such disappointment is not isolated to the mainstream, of course. Sometimes you can favorably carry something with you for years, only for something so sour to come along that its rot spreads to even your most favored memories. That's why it's time to finally talk about Mega Man X Dive. Growing up, I was a weird kid. Whenever I think of my childhood, the only song that comes to mind is the closing track of Fireworks' album Gospel, whose chorus shouts, "Did you grow up weird enough to laugh at how you used to be?" I wouldn't say that I was a loner, more that there weren't any kids in my class that I could tell had the same interests as me, which at that age was pretty much video games. Of all video games, though, none had captivated me more than Mega Man, first on the Nintendo and then again later when my brother brought home Mega Man X for the Super Nintendo. I was the kid who wore a Pringles can on his arm and pretended it was his blaster, on far more occurrences than therapists agree is healthy. To me, Mega Man was the king of cool. Who gives a shit about Superman or Batman when there's a blue robot boy with a laser cannon for an arm? He can steal other robots' powers and make them his own, infinitely expanding his own arsenal and capabilities. He can dash! Isn't that the coolest shit you've ever seen? No one else in my life shared even a fraction of my enthusiasm for the Blue Bomber, but my faith in further remained steadfast. Every birthday and every Christmas, if there was a new entry in one of the various Mega Man series, that would be at the top of my list. I still remember the Christmas morning wherein I got a PlayStation 2 and the newly released Mega Man X7, and hurriedly ran to my room to hook it up and play, only to find out that you can't even play as the titular Mega Man until most of the way through the game. That was perhaps the first time I realized the joy of Christmas was not immortal. X7 was a turning point for the franchise, in the way that turning into oncoming traffic is a turning point for soon-to-be scrapped vehicles and human bodies. The X series received another entry that was received favorably and considered a drastic improvement over X7, but even the sleek polish of X8 wasn't enough to keep things afloat. The series has received no new entries since. Until 2020, when word spread that there is a new project called Mega Man X Dive, being created by one of Capcom's studios in Taiwan, and for a moment the sun's majestic rays could be seen peeking above the horizon. These glimmers of hope faded quickly when it was revealed to be a gacha game. I was so dismissive of it that I intentionally chose to pretend it simply wasn't there. It didn't help that there wasn't an English version at the time, so that made it easier. This was, of course, the only notable event that happened worldwide in 2020. A few years later, in early 2022, X-Dive was finally given an English release and ported to Steam. This is where my story intersects with X-Dive's. According to Steam's data, I began this journey on March 22nd, 2023. From the moment I first booted up the game, I knew I would be making a video about this, and so for 3 years I've been collecting footage as well as my own thoughts. X-Dive has lived in my thoughts like a parasite. It is a pocket I reach into and fumble around in whenever I have free time. It is the hole in my lawn I misstep into whenever I think about Mega Man. A little over a year later, on July 30th, 2024, Mega Man X-Dive Online ended its service. The day came and went without fanfare. There was no rain in the sky or even a loud proclamation in the streets. The servers shut down without a whisper. I remember logging in around this time just to look around at the building before it was demolished. I only stayed a few moments before closing the program, for the last time. There may have been more of a hullabaloo around the game if an entirely self-contained offline version of the game titled Mega Man X-Dive Offline hadn't launched a few months prior, in August of 2023. The bottom line here is, Mega Man X-Dive, the experience as a whole, is the abyss where nostalgia dies. What do I mean by that? Look at the video runtime.
I've got a while to explain. Mega Man X-Dive is perhaps the single most impactful gaming experience I've ever had, for how it's rippled throughout my experience with other games, as well as the rest of the Mega Man franchise and my actual life itself. I would have never made a single video if it weren't for X-Dive, and every essay along the way has lain brick for me to find my path. Over the past 2 years, we've talked about many things, but all of them have been leading up to this discussion. In the Pedigree Tactics video, we briefly touched on ambition and the virtue of following your creativity. In The Importance of Dandadan, we talked about childhood loneliness and how those thoughts and feelings follow us through life and color each and every day we live. In the People and Planes video, we talked about how sometimes people will disappear from your life without rhyme or reason. And in the Eidolon video, we explored how sometimes you're that person, and the dangers of complacency that can lead you there with little notice. Lastly, in Memories Made for One, we chatted about how our storage mediums and media are fragile, fickle things, and how our memories rely on a faulty camera in our minds. It has all led here to discuss where it began.
Truly, the video you're watching now is the first video I ever started working on, or at least a phantom of it. I wasn't as experienced as I needed to be in order to tell you about the feeling of questioning your childhood and the validity of the things you had cared about for your entire lifetime. I didn't have the finesse to make you care about a beloved franchise so utterly bastardized that its current iteration is nigh unrecognizable. I wasn't a good enough editor to keep you entertained while I tell you about how sometimes rose-colored glasses are just rust. But I am now, though. I'm ready. I am. There's a saying I've heard throughout my life, usually in a literary context, about how if you stare into the abyss long enough, the abyss stares back. And through my experiences, I'm here to tell you that that is definitively incorrect. The truth is, whenever you stare into the abyss long enough, whenever you spend all of your time and energy on discerning the details of the darkness, it doesn't stare back, it becomes you.
Mega Man is a robot. Mega Man is a franchise, or collection of franchises of games going back decades. From a bird's eye view, the only thing a lot of these series have in common is that their protagonist is usually a blue-clad figure, usually sporting a type of blaster cannon for an arm, usually deployed in their fight for the greater good against evil robots. The core of Mega Man has always been this. Mega Man was built by the Kentucky Fried Scientist, Dr. Thomas Light, for the purpose of being humanity's savior. Mega Man's whole thing is that he's a robot, yeah, but he's a special robot, capable of free thought. Dr. Light's rival scientist with the iconic hairdo, Dr. Wily, is basically the typical cartoon bad guy. Wants to rule the world, creates evil robots to do it for him. Later entries of the series will flesh out these characters and their relationship more, shining some light on the gray areas in their personalities. But the catalytic Big Bang of the Rockman/Mega Man universe is a rivalry between Dr. Light and Dr. Wily to make the better robot and be the cooler, sexier scientist. There's also ample subtext on the topic of free will and destiny, and the endings of the classic Mega Man series are basically the classic trolley problem meme, with Mega Man reluctantly not killing Wily and propagating the cycle of endless conflict that echoes throughout the history of the entire franchise. We'll talk about that more later, though. In Mega Man X-Dive, you, the person watching this, you, capitalized proper noun, you, are playing Mega Man X one night and wabam! Somehow you're sucked into the game. Or rather a big database of all Mega Man games. You are not Mega Man X though, you are player. You, capitalized proper noun, are player, capital P, proper noun. You are the player who controls them but is not them. Instead, the characters are autonomous hunter data programs meant to weed out and exterminate any errant glitches that could cause problems for the Mega Man game data. It is an interesting play on the series' thematic loop of chasing down irregularly behaved robots. I don't understand why we, you, me, capital proper noun, we, have to be integrated and sucked into the world, only to then be told that we're the guy holding the controller. This is the extent of the plot, by the way. Player controls hunter programs in the forms of various Mega Man franchise characters to defeat these glitched data entries. There is extra dressing for the plot salad, but they are bland and predictable, such as new character that's just series icon 0 but blue instead of red. Or, the secret to solving the data is to find the 3 new characters that are just the designer's Mega Man OCs. In Mega Man X4's opening moments, a false flag attack is enacted on Sky Lagoon, causing the Maverick Hunters to think the peaceful Repliforce were behind the attack and turning public sentiment against the group. This labels them terrorists and begins actions to eradicate them, so that the series' bad guy can maneuver behind the scenes and catch Mega Man off guard. In Mega Man X Dive, your sidekick anime e-girl laments that she may be getting fat. I feel now is the perfect time to mention that in the $45 art book Mega Man X Dive Complete Works, whose back cover boasts plenty of creator commentary and an exclusive interview with the game's developers, 5 pages, it is mentioned that X Dive producer Yoda Hideto was given pretty much free reign over the game's story. To quote page 254 of the English version, "Actually, the story was pretty much all me. We didn't really have anyone assigned to it, so I went in thinking, well, someone has to do it. And that's how it became my responsibility. I had no writing experience prior to this, but I came at it after putting in a lot of research on prose, dialogue, and character relationships across the series. I like to know who's putting words into the mouths of my favorite characters, so I looked into what else Yoda has worked on. On Moby Games, his credits are vague and seem mostly managerial, while the Mega Man Knowledge Base wiki further clarifies that he was mostly in accounting until being made director. It also takes the time to mention that he still holds over 8 million shares of Capcom Taiwan stock. In Complete Works, he cites Mega Man 4 as the first video game his parents ever bought him.
But nobody really plays Mega Man for the plot. It helps hold things together and form cohesion, but ultimately people pick up these games because they enjoy the gameplay. Arguably, the gameplay is the most important part of the video game. It's half the name. The video part is implied. Most people just call video games games nowadays. And what do you do with games? You play them. Gameplay. It's in the name.
For the majority of Mega Man franchise experiences, you'll begin on the left side of the screen and make your way towards the objective, which is typically to the far right of your starting position. To get there, you must jump and shoot. Egoraptor's sequelitis video on the Mega Man games is painfully accurate when he says that they could just be called Jump and Shoot Man, because that's what he does. He just jumps and shoots. That's what it's all about, baby. On your way from the left side of the screen to the right side of the screen, you'll encounter enemies that you have to shoot, and obstacles that you have to jump over. Often, there will be multiple enemies, multiple obstacles, or both at the same time. Sometimes levels will have gimmicks or giant machines that pursue you, but I've given you a very simple explanation on how 99% of these games and their player experience will go. The core loop and distinguishing features of the series is that once Mega Man has defeated a Robot Master, or the boss of a level, he acquires their weapon. When switching to that Robot Master's weapon, Mega Man will change color or his outfit will otherwise be modified to reflect the element equipped. Each Robot Master has a weakness to a different Robot Master's weapon, so it's often viewed as a sort of puzzle to figure out the ideal order for tackling the bosses. In many games, but especially the X series, you can find health upgrades and Mega Man upgrades scattered throughout the levels, so there's incentive to explore and try to find hidden secrets. In Mega Man X, for example, once you've acquired everything, you can get the Hadouken from Street Fighter, an instant kill attack for almost every enemy in the game, including the final boss. I've referred to the Mega Man games as proto-Dark Souls games due to the way the plot is often delivered, but I also mean this in the way that the games approach challenge and difficulty. The Mega Man games were some of the earliest filters of noobs in the video game space, but the difficulty only existed in your own perspective. Much like the Souls games, you can clear the game using nothing but your starting weapon and relying on only your own knowledge and finesse. You can explore the levels to find upgrades and beef up Mega Man if you're having trouble. You can grind up your E-tanks for backup healing, or in some games you can just outright buy them to have a supply on hand. Or, you can challenge yourself and ignore all of it. See how far you can go with just the base Mega Man. You won't find success in just blindly rushing into situations and acting without thinking. You have to watch the enemies, learn the bosses and their patterns and weaknesses, and therein lies the true power the player gains. This has even been acknowledged by the makers of the games. In an interview with Mega Man 9 and 10 producer Hironobu Takeshita, he was asked what aspect makes a Mega Man game a Mega Man game. His response is, "I'd have to say it's the difficulty. Our concept with Mega Man 9 was to make another Mega Man game with the difficulty level of the 8-bit era games." This is not the case whatsoever with Mega Man X Dive. It is not an exaggeration to say that player interaction is at best minimal, and at worst completely optional. You simply are not in danger if you stand directly in an enemy's path, immediately in their line of fire. Your character will be hit, you'll exclaim in pain, and you will lose such an imperceptible amount of health that moments later you'll ponder if the entire thing was a hallucination. Due to the auto-aiming feature, you can simply hold down the firing button and the enemies will be blasted away without you having to engage a single brain cell. In the footage you're watching, I've started a new save file and I am interacting with the content in its very base state, and you'll see there is absolutely no challenge presented. This is closer to the walking simulators I often hear people complain about in discussions, rather than a Mega Man game. For a comparison, please enjoy this clip of me attempting the same behavior in the first stage of Mega Man X, the same level that X-Dive is attempting to recreate for nostalgia's sake. No, you didn't miss anything, and I didn't insert the wrong footage. That's how quickly you will die if you aren't actively involved in your own survival. While recording this exact set of footage for X-Dive, my fiancée walked into the room and watched for a moment. After a pause, she said, "Honey, this looks like shit," and I just laughed. I turned to her and said, "Yeah, this is the Mega Man the next video's about," and with a sudden look of understanding, she nodded and sighed. I can see why. Spikes have always been an instant death for our blue friend, as has falling into an endless pit of nothingness. Now, you'll just take a bit of environmental damage and can either jump out of the spike pit, or you'll pop up on the platform you were last standing on before falling into the pit. There's not even a mirage of consequences that would otherwise force you to grow as a player. The difficulty in Mega Man X-Dive is entirely numerical, and if you have devoted enough time into your number getting bigger, then there is no illusion of challenge. So how does your number get bigger? The universe concept of X-Dive is internet-based, with all of the characters, enemies, and stages being referred to as various forms of data. In a way, I suspect this was meant to be cheekily self-aware, but instead just kinda comes off as nonsense. Of course, the internet's true purpose is for shopping, so that's one of the ways you level up. That's not even a joke. You can level up by shopping for other data, and once you've bought enough of that data, you can unlock them for use, which raises your universal power level. As an example, I used the zenny, money in the Mega Man games, from completing the first couple stages to purchase 50 units of Mega Man Zero's data, and as 30 are required to initially unlock him, I was then able to do just so. Just unlocking him boosted my power level enough to even further trivialize the next few stages. I wanted to play a stage or two with my new character, and having recently started replaying the Zero and ZX games, I was excited to use his unique sword and firearm, only to boot into a stage and still have the same loadout as the base Mega Man X you start with. The only difference was my in-game sprite, and the two skills that make each character unique. You no longer gain weapons from defeating bosses, and you can no longer amass a large collection of weapons throughout your playthrough. The breadth of your arsenal will always be locked down to the 2 weapons you choose to take into battle, as well as the skills of your character. This can be a problem in some levels wherein enemies appear that are only susceptible to melee weapons. If you didn't bring a sword along to the level, that sucks. Exit and start over. Learn better for next time, loser. Gameplay aside, this is one of my longest running gripes with this game, because the implications of this are actually kind of massive. I've always thought of the buster on Mega Man's arm as part of him, a unique part to Mega Man. It's the fucking Mega Buster, not the Hasbro arm shooter, but here a large portion of every character's unique signature weaponry is available in the shop for sale. My complaint isn't that you can swap around weapons and put together your own personalized build. I think that's a fun, positive aspect of the game. My complaint is that you already have to grind to unlock a character, one you will likely choose based on previous familiarity, and then you have to grind further in order to get the things that make the character feel like that character. So when I went to get Mega Man Zero's iconic triangular saber sword and tried to find his little futuristic pistol thing, I was disappointed to find that the sword was still a good bit out of my budget, and I wasn't even able to find the pistol. Bummer. I later found out that the pistol is one of the weapon skills of another player. That's the only way to use it. From reading the official Mega Man X-Dive Works book, it seems that the staff were more concerned with the aesthetics of the weapons and making them visually interesting, rather than how they would perform and improve the player experience. The models of the weapons themselves are, to their credit, very good. A sizable portion of the art book is just displaying all the weapons from various angles. This was a problem the staff of Mega Man 1 had. They designed the weapons to look cool and relate to the robot masters they were claimed from. Developer Kitamura said in a 2011 interview, "In the first game, we designed the weapons by thinking about the corresponding robot master weakness. This focus on the robot masters sometimes caused us to neglect thinking about whether the weapons were fun, how they would actually work in-game, etc. As mentioned, in X-Dive you don't get weapons from defeating bosses, so there isn't even this facet that they could have instead been focused on. By removing this part of the equation, getting weapons from bosses, they've eliminated one of the main forms of progression and powering up that provides the feeling of empowerment to the player throughout the playthrough. So how do you power up Mega Man in X-Dive? How does your health bar get bigger? As the enemies grow more powerful and resilient, how do you keep up? The most significant way of powering up is by menuing. That's right. By simply navigating through a few of these semi-confusing menus, you can find the buttons labeled Power Up that allow you to spend your zenny and mission rewards to do just that. While clearing stages and leveling up by experience point gain provides a very tiny power boost, actually going through all the pages and pages of menus and clicking pointless things gives you a massive power boost. When I first did this, it doubled my power level, from 9,000 to almost 19,000. This is just from playing the stages normally. I didn't grind any except once or twice to 3-star it. The massive difference this immediately makes in the gameplay is simply ludicrous. Whereas previously enemies would take upwards of 12 to 15 Buster Blasts to slay, now they simply died in 1 or 2. All because I clicked some menus and pressed Power Up. Truly, if you want to keep up with the power levels that the late game asks of you, you'll spend far more time menuing and clicking again than you will spend actually playing the game.
Arguably, by that metric, this makes menuing the main gameplay of Mega Man X-Dive, with the traditional Mega Man gameplay being a side mechanic that just allows you to do more menuing. Disagree with me in the comments below. I dare you. If I wanted to do that much menuing, I'd just play a Neo game.
This aspect of player power means that the weapon system is even more busted than previously assessed. Each weapon has its own power level, which means that eventually there will be clear winners and losers when it comes to choice. If this gun and this sword have the highest power level when fully upgraded, why bother using anything else at that point? Why not just stick to the meta, since otherwise you're handicapping yourself with a lower than possible power level? The game expects you to still level up all those other weapons, however. They all contribute to your power level. The game has been reduced to menuing in order to get the highest arbitrary number. Bosses no longer have weapon weaknesses. They have numerical weaknesses. Any difficulty is simply measuring too much of a difference between your integer and the opponent's. When I fully came to terms with this and what it meant for the game and potentially the future of the franchise, it pierced something inside of me. To see and fully behold something sacred become hollow. This was when I encountered the Abyss. During high school, I spent an embarrassing amount of time on Omegle, chatting with strangers and pretending to be a member of Fall Out Boy in order to make teen girls lose their minds. Through these concerning escapades, I met a girl who lived across the country in Pennsylvania, and we started dating.
Oh yeah, we're getting into the really cringe stuff here. Did you grow up weird enough to laugh at how you used to be?
It was around this time that I had started paying attention to a rising band called Fun, consisting of Nate Roos of The Format, Jack Antonoff of Steel Train and now Bleachers and Taylor Swift producer fame, and multi-instrumentalist wonderkind Andrew Dost. Their first album, Aim and Ignite, received critical success but not mainstream success, but they were basically the popping and boiling indie band kept just below the lid, ready to break out at any moment. Their international success would come with their second album, Some Nights, and the accompanying single, We Are Young. If you were anyone, anywhere, in the early 2010s, you remember that song. I skipped my prom both years of high school because that was the cool thing to do. And after We Are Young came out, a friend came up to me and said they'd played it at prom, to which we both scoffed about them having sold out. I enjoyed Some Nights, and I really adored Aim and Ignite, but my true affection has always stayed with Nate's previous band, The Format. Even through my adult years, I always compare albums to the impact that The Format's second album, Dog Problems, left on an adolescent me. The album's title and title track referred to the Faustian bargain of his previous relationship. Instead of breaking up and ending the relationship, they'd repeatedly just get a new dog, as a way to bond and mend things. Once the relationship ended for good, however, he was now stuck with all of these dog problems. The Format's first album, Interventions and Lullabies, was a product of its time, an indie pop-punk record that showed it had the potential to be so much more. Nate's lyricism has always been the main part of the band's appeal to me, and to a depressed teen me, it was the first time I truly paid attention to what was being said. The first time I related to something and found myself digging to the root of it, desperate for more.
Eventually, the internet girlfriend and I would meet up. More than that, both of my parents agreed to ship me out to Pennsylvania for the summer so I could stay with these people we'd never met before, for my sole motivation of wanting to bone their daughter. As an adult, I genuinely wonder if they were trying to get me killed. I should check to see if there was a life insurance policy in effect around then.
A part that my internet girlfriend hadn't told me about beforehand was that her family was loaded, both with drama and sweet, sweet cash. Her grandfather ran a very lucrative machining shop that I spent a few days working at the ripe age of 15, before I looked up a YouTube video of lathe accidents. Nope. While I was there, they had a contract for making mag lights, and it was my duty to sand down any rough edges on the flashlight heads as they were pulled from the CNC machines. If you have a giant mag light from the early 2010s, there's a chance I touched it after scratching my nuts and listening to All Time Low's Dirty Work on my iPod. At one point, her family rented out a massive log cabin property out in the mountains for a family vacation, and since I was there at the time, they happily invited me. Despite the horrific abuse towards each other I witnessed, they were always very kind and accommodating to me. The living room had a wall made of glass that overlooked the approaching driveway and highway below, and one night after everyone else had fallen asleep, I pulled a chair up so close to the wall, I still remember my toes touching the framing at the bottom as I sat. I listened to the format's non-album track, Janet. I lost my memory in a cab back in the city. It's somewhere off of Lexington. Just something that the East Coast does to me. Makes me forget who I am. Part of the reason I had so eagerly taken the chance to fly across the country was because I was tired of being me. A feeling every teenager has at least a handful of times a day. It seemed like it would be easier to reinvent yourself somewhere where nobody knows any version of you. But no matter the distance traveled, you can never be far from yourself. I listened to track 7 on Dog Problems, Oceans. Why am I scared of people in a room? Why can't they see a good time or the people close to you? Why don't I just give in, have a drink and shake some hands? And later on in the same song, maybe it's time I put up a profile of who I want to be. Fool everyone. I could start over clean. I could hide behind a big blue screen, or you could return to me. Return to me. I sat and thought about the format and how they had said a reunion was unlikely to ever happen, and it occurred to me then that the feeling of loving something and having its potency fade. It was a feeling I later felt when Fun disbanded for good. Nate Roos later did a solo album, and after securing his bag with a bunch of mainstream pop collabs, he promptly said see ya and ducked out of the public eye. Goals, honestly. I understood what it meant to be a fan of something and feel so personally damaged by its loss. I had grown and explored aspects of myself and my life through the lens of his music, and I looked forward to more future growth alongside more future works from him. When an artist you have that kind of relation to steps away from creating, in a way it's a method of expression and learning that's being cut off. You can still relate to and understand the past works, but there won't be anything new for you to form a connection to as you grow, as you become a new person in all your various iterations throughout your life. It's a type of personal paralysis that isn't talked about much. Sitting there that night, staring out at the endless dark whose only weak spot was a blue hue lining the mountains on the horizon, it was the first time I felt the abyss, though I would only later come to know it by that name. At the time, it was just a feeling that I tried to commit to words in my notes app, but failed. I sat there with myself for however long it took to finish the album, and then decided it was better if I just went to bed.
The cabin they'd rented was very nice, though its interior was mostly monotonous with a lot of indistinguishable doors. While aiming for the bathroom in the dark, I instead opened a door to find my girlfriend's incredibly busty aunt, topless and asleep on her bed with the lights on. In my shock, I tried nanoseconds too late to stop myself from bleeding out a very Midwestern ope, and hastily retreated as quickly and quietly as I could. Over pancakes the next morning, my girlfriend's aunt asked her son if he had forgotten something and come into her room in the middle of the night, to which he honestly replied no, puzzled. She looked at him with suspicion, then shook her head and changed the subject.
I ended the previous section on the note that I do because it mirrors the same feeling and experience I had in X-Dive whenever I saw how many bikini-clad baddies bolster the barracks of your character selection. I think we can agree that Mega Man is not a series known for using sex in its marketing. I mean, they're robots. There was a fiasco when we got the first female robot master in Mega Man 9, and I don't even know why. There aren't any designs I can think of where arousal is any part of what I feel whenever I see them. It's why I was so shocked to see how many swimsuit and white day characters there are in the game. And most of these aren't just skins over existing playable characters, they're all unique with their own skills and animations and upgrade paths. Part of this is surely to give you more things to click and boost your power level, but that's an immense amount of effort from the developers. From my quick count, there are at least 25 playable characters that are just variants of already existing female characters, redrawn to show more human-like skin and accentuate their human-like curves. Some of these characters, like Swimsuit Furham and Gangsta Girl Eratoire, don't even look like robots. Tell me those don't just look like saucy VTubers. I dare you. Let's not even talk about how many of these characters show off their underwear for just a second if you're watching closely. This is just one of my design complaints with the game. It's just the only one I could think of to use as a segue from talking about my ex-girlfriend's bodacious aunt. I am baffled to no end at how they handled the levels of the story's campaign, if it can be called that. I see it more as a series of trials to test your tenacity and see how far the human spirit can be pushed. There are 23 chapters for the campaign, and each of those is split into 6 stages, save for the few super duper special chapters which only have 1 stage. This gives a total of 123 stages for the story mode. Compared to the classic Mega Man games as well as the Mega Man X series, this does seem like a gluttony of content. Those games only featured up to 8 main stages, with a handful of Dr. Wily or Sigma stages at the end to serve as the climactic conclusion and playground for all you've learned and gained so far. In the same 2011 interview with Akira Kitamura, the designer and creator of Mega Man, he mentioned that one of his explicit goals was for you to be able to clear all of the stages in the game in an hour, the Robot Masters taking up the first half hour, and the Wily stages taking up the latter half. This works out to about 5 minutes per stage, 300 seconds, and I mention this for good reason. At the end of each stage in X-Dive, you're given a ranking based on 3 criteria. Did you complete the stage? If you're at this screen, probably. Do you still have at least 30% of your health? Almost certainly, yeah. Did you clear the stage within 300 seconds? 5 minutes. These criteria are laughable for more than one reason, but especially the mention of that 5-minute timer. Most stages will struggle to keep you enthralled for even a single minute. Before I finished writing the previous section, I sat and replayed 5 levels at random under the challenge difficulty, and from the moment you select the stage to the moment control is taken away from you for the results screen, my readings range from 50 seconds to 1 minute 11 seconds. In each of these chapters, you'll usually have a mini-boss for stage 3, and always a proper boss for stage 6. Gee, that kinda sounds like they just took a regular Mega Man X level and chopped it up into pieces to make it look like there's more content than there actually is. That couldn't be. Like, imagine if they took Chill Penguin's stage in Mega Man X, and they cut off the level right at the entrance to the cave. Is that what we call it? A cave? I mean, there's bats at the mouth. Like, I assume it's a cave, right? Right? Then they had the next level be the lead up to Dr. Light's capsule, and then the next level cut off at the start of the mech section, etc. That would be miserable! I'm focusing too much on the story mode here, which is usually the main draw for single-player games, but hey, I'm not here to judge. There's also many other modes included. Take, for example, the Jacob's Ladder Orbital Elevator mode, taken from the story device of the same name from Mega Man X8. Marketing for the game, and for the mode in particular, advertised the mode has over 500 levels. And so it does! The Jacob's Ladder Elevator mode can best be described as capital C content. It is the video game equivalent of making your punctuation a larger font size in order to pad out the length of your school report. 175 levels of absolute mindless nothing. It is easily the area of the game that was given the least attention, especially in the balancing department. Each level of the elevator is simply a gauntlet of enemies that lasts on average about 1 minute. You'll have up to 3 minutes per stage, but the countdown starts as soon as the loading begins, so you always lose 10 seconds before you even have control of your character. You'll defeat a few waves of enemies, the elevator will come to a stop, and you'll get a big flashy "You did it" screen congratulating you. Select stage, rinse, repeat. Every few levels there is a boss or mini-boss encounter pulled from a very small pool of candidates, and since the only difficulty in this game is numerical, their difficulty increases in the form of wildly expanding health bars. By the mid-70s, you're encountering bosses with almost 400 health bars. What the fuck, man? I remember thinking Sephiroth in Kingdom Hearts was a bit egregious, but 400? Going back to that timer situation, bosses usually offer 2.5 minutes for completion. As mentioned, you lose the first 10 seconds to loading, but after finishing the boss, the counter keeps going for some reason, usually about another 12 seconds. You can defeat the boss and still fail the level because you didn't leave enough time for that after-battle timer to run out. Out of 2.5 minutes, you have about 130 seconds to complete almost 400 life bars. You're expected to be powerful enough to kill 3 life bars per second. Even while at 3 times the recommended power level, I was having severe difficulty doing enough damage to actually kill them within the time allotted. This is next to the mini-bosses, which in some cases are defeatable with a single blast. It's just not balanced or thought out at all. Occasionally there will be a single level, like 67 or 74, which introduce other elements and make it more like a proper stage, albeit on a miniature scale. There are 3 difficulties for Jacob's Ladder: regular, hard, and challenge. All of them are the exact same, save for the numbers regarding the enemies. Same amount, placement, etc. The final level is 2 bosses each with 249 life bars apiece. For your toils, you get the amazing prize of a handful of in-game currency, the exact same type and amount as almost every other floor before it. Nothing special, nothing to commemorate all you've done. Nothing to show for the almost 200 levels of nothing you conquered. Truly, there is no point to any of it other than to kill time.
Additionally, it being called Jacob's Ladder does imply that Christianity is a thing in the Mega Man universe. Just saying, Capcom, lots of crossover opportunities left untapped here. With all the fan games and concepts I see on the internet, I just know someone has a concept art for Mega Man X Crucified just waiting for the right time to appear.
There's still one more game mode we haven't touched on under the story umbrella, according to the game at least. I don't see how it pertains to the story mode in any way, shape, or form, but a race mode is listed under the story content of X-Dive. As far as I can tell from my experience and the experiences of others, these are just time trial stages with no real rewards aside from a few more ticks of completion for your power level clicking adventure diary. 45 stages to race through. Have fun. None of it's fulfilling, none of it's satisfying. This concludes the content that the game classifies as story, which confuses me more than the inclusion of race mode under that category. The other section of player content is the events section, and arguably one of the more popular draws of the offline version of the game. There are 23 seasonal event stages and 17 special event stages included in X-Dive Offline. Notably absent from X-Dive Online are some of the crossover collaborations such as the Rockman X-Dive / Devil May Cry stages and characters, although modders have added all those back in for your enjoyment. In my opinion, these special stages are much closer to the traditional Mega Man X gameplay and level layout than anything in story mode. They feel significantly more thought out, and some will actually present a challenge to players that isn't entirely numerical. The fact that plot beats are written for almost all of these events, including the X-Dive characters, is why it's so baffling why these aren't considered story by the development team. There are downsides to the event stages though. Almost all of them will require you to complete them multiple times over to meet some arbitrary score metric in order to claim all of the rewards from that event. Some of them also focus on these swimsuit characters I mentioned earlier, and it just feels odd. Some of these are obviously meant to be funny, like the Bridal Chaos event, wherein some of the female characters are infected by bridal bugs that cause their outfits to become skimpy revealing wedding dresses. At least they attempted to give a lore reason for that kind of fan service, which they didn't even consider when designing the original characters that appear in X-Dive. Let's talk about character design for a moment. Mega Man is a robot. Mega Man X, also a robot. Zero. You guessed it, he's also a robot. Almost all of the characters from classic Mega Man and Mega Man X are robots. They are built and designed for their purpose, and you see this reflected more so in the Robot Master designs. Spark Mandrill operates the power plant in Mega Man X. In the first Mega Man, Cutman cuts stuff up, and you can tell that's what he does because he has big ol' clippers on his head. Now I'm going to show you the new characters created for X-Dive. You may notice one of them is just Zero, but blue. I wonder where his plot arc goes. His name is Via, and he has no mouth. Cool, got it. Your e-girl sidekick for the duration of X-Dive is named Rico, and there's another character named Eco, but that's just Rico's name without 25% of the letters. I thought maybe there is a thing where they were split sides of the same person, a data glitch that manifested as a distorted image of the regular Rico, but no, they're just sisters. That's like having two girls and naming one Samantha, and the other, you ponder for a moment and then just name them Amantha. Then you have a character like Droit Claire? I don't even understand where the parts of this name come from. Claire? Sure, yeah, but Droit? And just putting them together like that? Droit Claire? That sounds more like someone's name and title after they've suffered a heavy demotion at work, much less someone's full name that they are expected to be called by other people. I imagine the creative prompt for her was Twitter e-girl who shops exclusively at Hot Topic circa 2016, and is also a robot, I guess, sorta.
I understand I don't have all the room in the world to talk on this subject. My name is literally just 2 letters. How many nicknames do you think people could come up with working on that? Yeah, jack shit. Thanks, Mom and Dad.
But then you move on the list and find Angel. Oh, no, sorry. There's no L. Angie Petoyer?
What?
What did I just read? Is that a typo, or did the character designer decide to just flail on the keyboard meme style and see if anyone noticed? Angel Fella and Droit Claire are siblings to Eratoir, which is almost a complete collection of vowels. On the wiki it says that each of their names are frequently shorted to Angie, Droit, and Erato, and it puzzles me why they wouldn't just make those their regular names. Is it a copyright thing? You had to make the names nobody had ever conceived before? These 3 siblings were intentionally designed like they don't come from the Mega Man universe, which I don't think is what people usually do when handling entries for long-established franchises. They were designed to look at a place, and they do. Mission accomplished. They stand out, and not in a particularly great way. By trying to stand out, they instead just come off as generic. Eratoire is probably the best example of my complaints regarding character design in Xdive. Look at her character page. Why isn't her name just Underboob? Her alternate costume character in the game is the hilariously conceived Gangsta Girl Eratoire. Does this look like a robot to you? Does this look like a Megaman character? Forget what video you're watching, forget how much fun you're having, and forget your previous notions. If you saw this character design anywhere on the web during any part of your life, would your thoughts go anywhere near, oh yeah, that's a Megaman character? Thinking of all this makes me remember an interview from Bahamut GNN News in 2023, translated and posted in English by Rockman Corner of August of the same year. The subject of the interview is none other than our friend Yoda Hideto, and the very first answer of the interview blew my fucking mind. The interviewer asks what prompted the development for Xdive after such a long time without a new entry in the series. Yoda explains that he, quote, took the initiative to connect with the producer of Mega Man in Japan, and negotiated with him to make a Mega Man game in Taiwan. After that, I got right to work. End quote.
It was that easy? All he had to do was ask?
Xdive started development in May 2018, and the most recent Mega Man X game, Mega Man X8, released on December 7th, 2004, ahead of its Japan release a few months later. It took someone 13.5 years to ask to make another Mega Man X? There were other Mega Man games in development at other points. There was the first-person Maverick Hunter concept that, despite what you all say, I think looked sick as hell and showed potential. There's the fabled Mega Man Tyson that leaks have hinted at for years, and is supposedly the biggest budget entry of the series yet. There's 40,000 fan games and tributes out there doing Mega Man to great success, and yet the Blue Bomber seemed mostly ignored by its developers.
I was so disillusioned with the series at this point that it changed something in me.
I grinded a bit in Xdive online. According to Steam, I spent 19 hours in the title, and I put it away forever. I remember going back to the older titles, the original Mega Man X, Mega Man 8, the Battle Network games, and found that none of them felt right anymore. From foreknowledge of their sequel descendants, they had lost their shine and their fun.
Having that experience was very odd for me because so much of my gaming history and identity had been tied to the Blue Bomber. It really made me sit and reevaluate a lot of notions in gaming and in my own life that I'd carried with me all this time.
There hadn't been much activity in the series in recent years. Mega Man 11 was the most recent addition, and it was a confusing disappointment on many fronts. Seeing Xdive as the half-resuscitated corpse of an old friend felt like just the catalyst for my brain to write him off as dead. I sat down at my computer and started writing. I'm going to make a video essay, I told myself, having never made one before. 3 years later, I'm making good on that promise.
Growing up, I saw Mega Man as a role model. He was always portrayed as the objective force of good, fighting the objective force of evil. Save for some very shady things that happen in the later X games, he's always portrayed as the good guy. To defeat evil, to save humanity and return home made only stronger by your struggles. To be celebrated as a hero and known by others as someone that they can rely on. What more is there for a boy to dream of and aspire to? I didn't want to go to college and sell records online. I never once thought of being a YouTuber or a writer or an editor or anything in between. I only ever wanted to be a hero. I only ever wanted to be a Mega Man. There are 3 of my own robot masters in this story. 3 people who ruined my life and set me free. Amber, Dylan, and Daniela. These are their real names, and they are all dead now.
I always return to their memory like a detective, like a sick man who's convinced the cure lies somewhere between the lines of years-old text messages. Amber was a girl I'd randomly added on Facebook back in the day when that sort of thing wasn't seen as weird. We chatted a bit and eventually went out on a very nice, very innocent dinner date, full of laughs and half-burnt french fries from a local steakhouse that had obviously gone quite downhill. We talked about life and anime, her favorite of which was Teen Titans, and I asked, "Is Teen Titans an anime?" And she cocked her head and looked at me as if I'd sprouted an additional 4 heads from my neck. Yeah, she said with a pointed scoff as she dipped a fry. The conversation shifted to One Punch Man before I could establish a counter-argument. There wasn't a second date. I was still young and hadn't quite figured out dating or relationships, and still hadn't begun to get a hold on my social anxiety. We'd exchange a few messages and loosely keep in touch for a bit, but then lost contact. A few years later, we added each other on Snapchat and talked and became good friends. She was spending the summer visiting her father, and we were counting down the days until she'd be back and we could hang out again. She was then as she was when I first met her, where she was the first person I'd met who was completely and vibrantly 100% themselves, without the concerns of the opinions of others. We'd joked that I'd get bored enough to just drive and get her. She was only in the next state over. It wouldn't take more than an afternoon to retrieve her, or just to visit and come back. Nah, spend time with your dad. We'll see each other in a few days. I should have told myself that I was bored enough to make the drive. 3 days before she was set to return, she was hit and killed by a drunk driver. My last message to her on Snapchat will forever remain unopened. Amber was my first experience with someone I was close to who was there one day and gone the next, not due to any health reason or act of God, but from the selfish and reckless acts of another. I'd had 2 classmates pass away during my primary school years, both of them also from driving collisions. Kip passed away when we were very young, and I'd only seen him around school once or twice. We didn't have any classes together, and so his absence didn't impact me much. Aaron was different. We were older, heading into high school. He was also claimed by a drunk driver. I'd only ever had a few conversations with him. We'd never hung out outside of school. We were MySpace friends, though, and in the only photo I remember, he's holding a flatbread sandwich from the Subway in our local mall's food court, smiling. Captioned, "This sandwich pissed grease," I can see his forced smile next to the sandwich focused crystal clear in my mind, though everything else in frame is blurry. To this day, I throw the phrase "pissing grease" around as naturally as if it was my own. Amber was the first person in my adult life, though. She was the first person I lost who I had made plans with, who I was expecting and looking forward to seeing in the very near future, and someone who I had definitely envisioned being a part of my own future. Her sudden departure left a hole in the fabric of my life that I've never known how to mend. After her passing, I found her Tumblr blog and spent a day reading through every single post she'd ever made. I found out she'd written about me. Not by name, but by aligning the dates I knew it was about me. A post about our first and only date, with her over the moon about finally going out with someone who was actually nice to her. Dylan Clark was a better man than I'll ever be. He was my friend. He was everyone's friend. I genuinely don't think I've ever heard anyone say a mean-spirited word about Dylan Clark. I mean that honestly. He was funny and he was talented, and he was always trying to make everyone at least smile, if not laugh. To this day, he still has the best Hank Hill impression I've ever heard. The first time I really remember hanging out with Dylan one-on-one was when he asked me to help him write some guitar parts and see if I would be a good fit for a band he was thinking of putting together. We went to the park with our acoustic guitars and sat under one of the brick pavilions as he tried to technically explain his ideas to me, someone who had never bothered to learn a bit of music theory. We didn't accomplish much that day, aside from making each other laugh. While we were there, a coworker of mine came walking up with his girlfriend, and that was the first time I met the lady who would later ruin my life in multiple other ways. We'll talk about her in a different video, at a different time. Without Dylan inviting me to hang out and jam, the echoes of my life after that moment take a very different shape. Like every artist I've known, Dylan had his demons. He had an acid trip planned once and asked me for a blanket to lay on in the grass while he was undergoing his expedition. I didn't hear from Dylan for a few days, and when I finally did, he told me about how at the peak of his experience a demon appeared before him and tried to kill him, but the blanket had offered him a type of protection that allowed him to survive unscathed. I foolishly asked him for the blanket back a few weeks later, and I thought nothing of it at the time when he seemed reluctant to let it go. I could tell he looked up to me for whatever reason, though I really only acknowledge that now. It makes it all the harder to remember the call wherein I was told our other friends had found him in his house with a bag over his head. In the coming days, I didn't really know how to react, so I withdrew from everything socially. Some people apparently took offense to this. I wasn't told about the memorial service that followed. I didn't even know about it until months later, when as I entered a girl's apartment and she pulled me in a beeline towards her bedroom, I passed a pamphlet for the service, stuck eye level on her refrigerator. Let me tell ya, nothing ruins a hookup more than unexpected grief. Every day the weight in my chest reminds me that I let him down. It is an anchor. I still have the blanket. My fiancé uses it on the couch almost every evening as we watch Taskmaster. I pretend not to notice when she uses it as a napkin. Sometimes I think of burning it, but I know I would regret it. There are plenty of people who are closer to him than I was. If we were discussing a TV series called Dylan, my role would be the guy in the background of a lot of scenes who has a plotline here and there, but is mostly just set dressing. Yet I still feel partially responsible for what happened, and I don't know if I'll ever escape the feeling that I let him down. Dylan is memorialized in a lot of ways. There are bumper stickers and commemorative tattoos. His music is still online, and he's the cover of at least one album. I have an undeveloped roll of film sliding around in a drawer somewhere, from when we went to St. Louis to see Foxing and Into It Over It play at the Firebird. We stopped at a wayward gas station along the way. It was autumn and the sun had started to weaken when Dylan and our other friend Zach sat leaning against the brickwork of the gas station to smoke a cigarette. I worry that photo won't turn out as clearly as it is in my mind, and I don't know why I hesitate in finding out. I'm genuinely unsure of how about I first came in contact with Daniela. I'm guessing it would have had to be through Tumblr way back when. She lived on the other side of the world, and we never met. Still, though, she was the brightest sunspot of a person I've ever witnessed. The bubbliest, kindest, most supportive person you can imagine. When talking about the deceased, we tend to talk in extremes, to exaggerate their qualities and make them almost seem larger than life. But if I was exaggerating, I wouldn't think of her every time I see the color yellow. Her loss is the greatest example of lost potential I've ever seen in the world. We would fall out of touch for a while and then email each other nonstop for weeks. In 2013, I only knew what WhatsApp was because she had me download it so we could keep in contact easier. For about 10 years, she was the friend I wish I lived closer to, the one I always wished I could spend more time with, the one I looked forward to finally visiting and seeing all the places I'd heard explained for years and years. She held an art exhibit in her town, and at the time I wanted nothing more than to be there and see it with her. She was the brightest pinpoint of brilliant optimism you could imagine. One day I stopped hearing from Danny, but I didn't think too much of it because she was a busy girl, and as mentioned, sometimes she would just drop out of my world to reappear later just as casually. A few weeks turned to a few months, turned to several months, and I started to grow concerned. There aren't any public obituaries I could find from her passing. Doesn't really seem to be a thing where she lives. One of her friends tagged her in a post about a For Daniela book she was working on, and with a widening pit in my stomach I messaged her and asked what was going on. That's how I found out. She was a force of nature who strove to make an impact on the world and leave it a better place than it was before she encountered it. I scrounged every corner of the web that I could. Any sort of memorial page or obituary or even mention of her loss at all. There was nothing, and I couldn't accept that. It consumed me until I found the smallest trace of events transpired. It didn't list her by name, or even that a person was involved. All I could find was the service interruption announcement from Den Haag Central Station, from the day she stopped the trains. Though I swear I made a bookmark of the page or took a screenshot or made some evidence that it was there, now I cannot find it. In Danny's last message to me, she asked me for a recipe that she would never make. It bothers me that I don't have more to say about Daniela or Dylan or Amber. These people were important enough to me that I feel it important to tell you about their loss and what it did to me. Yet I struggle to say more than a couple hundred words that isn't just relating to you a memory of that person. I waited all this time to talk about these people I carry with me every day, because I figured if enough time passed, I'd be able to see through them, to see past them. To be able to think and convey my thoughts without having their roads take extensive detours around the shape of their memory. They say time heals all wounds, but it isn't really a wound. It's more of a stain that doesn't wash out, even if you scrub until your fingers bleed and lose feeling. Every day it feels like there's so much inside me that if I take one wrong step, if I misjudge a footfall and stumble, then I'll crack open and nothing but blackness will spill out, rotting and decaying everything it touches. Everything else that I care about. In another Fireworks song, lead singer Dave McKinder says, "I wish I could piss on a strip to see what's really going on with me." I had wanted this video to be a grand bombastic finale, to be the perfectly presented end cap of the first season. I pushed it back and avoided it because I figured if I waited long enough, I'd be able to find answers. I thought those impossible ideal conditions would magically arrive. That's what this has been about, the thread that ties together Season 1. Media and the things we enjoy can help us process and understand the things we've been through. It took me until Mega Man X Dive to realize that I never fully acknowledged what Amber and Dylan and Daniela did to me, what they took with them when they left. I never let myself grieve the loss of their present and also their future because I never knew how to feel those feelings. I had never known the abyss by any other name. I was stuck in a retrospective loop, only capable of looking back and judging all of my actions and decisions through that frame. It's dumb to say that I gained this from a video game, but the truth is the truth, even if it's lame. There's a memory I have of Dylan. We're sitting in the far corner booth of the Denny's. I'm seated with my back against the wall, Dylan seated across from me. We were talking about something or other, and I remember with a saccharine clarity him making a joke. "Why would you look backwards?" He pointed to the undecorated gray wall behind me, "when you could be looking forwards instead." He pointed both of his thumbs at himself and wiggled his eyebrows. A pause. "Plus, you'll hurt your neck if you do it long enough." We laughed. Recalling this, I feel the side of my neck begin to ache. In a way, video games are the prime examples of the playland where nostalgia runs rife. No matter what happens in your life, in the outside world, to the people you know and love, to the things you cherish and hold dear, the video game will still be the same. You can return there at any point and it'll always be the exact same. It'll always be how you remember it, granted you're recalling things accurately. I'm not the same person I was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, but I can still load up Mega Man X and he's still right there. He may be behind a different pane of glass, his sprite may have been remastered or accentuated, there may be a new graphical filter, but Mega Man is still right there. Close enough to touch, if not for the impermeable boundary between our physical and digital worlds. In the previous video we talked about how your memories are always ever, eternally your memories. You cannot share the images in your mind, you cannot make the other person experience how the air smelled as you recount your story. A memory is a solitary private thing that cannot ever be shared in totality. But video games are a different story. True, you cannot replicate and relay the memory perfectly. Another person won't press the same buttons in the same order with the same timing. Their own experiences will shape their perception of things slightly differently. But we're all still coming from and formulating from the same baseline. You can have movies or TV shows as comfort media you return to because you already know how things will go, but there is no variance there. It will always be the same series of actions leading to the same series of results, every time. I can recommend a game to someone, and no matter how many years have passed since I first or last experienced the same thing, I already know pretty much the experience that person is going to have with the game. The same thing can't be said of places or people or events. Those are always in flux, always changing into something other than what our memory wants it to be. I've visited the same lakeside walking path on a regular basis for over a decade now, and while I could likely walk its entire length with my eyes closed, there's always the likely chance that something has changed since my last visit. Even if it was just yesterday. A new branch has fallen from above and landed on the path. There's a new puddle. Maybe one of the turtles from the pond has decided to hang out with the morning joggers. There really is always something. Yet people have completed Mega Man games blindfolded, going off only subtle audio cues and soundtrack shifts. Their consistency is reliable. It is static and unmoving. There is, of course, no chance of a new enemy spawning in a new location, or a new room appearing on a map. Although apparently in real life there is the chance of a very small statue of a Bigfoot spawning overnight. Is it really a Bigfoot if, like, you're substantially taller than it? I'm not even a tall guy, but I fucking tower over this hairy little twink of a Sasquatch. Anyway, this won't be the last time we talk about the Sasquatch statue, though that will be in a different video. I can't take you back to that Denny's where Dylan and I spent a handful of late nights, drinking lots of coffee and then wondering why we were unable to sleep. The building's gone. I drove by a while back because Papa needed a grand slam, and it was just gone. No notice, no warning, nothing. I could take you to the patch of dirt, but it wouldn't mean anything to you or anyone else, save a distant version of myself. Maybe the feelings I feel, the rush I get when I think of being a kid and playing Mega Man, maybe that's just remembering a time before I grew up and was inundated with responsibilities. before my exuberance had been weathered and worn down by life's trials and disappointments. Maybe I wasn't nostalgic for the game, but more so for the person I was when I was first playing the game. This very low-level realization punctured the swelling abscess in my soul I was convinced would only go away if I successfully exorcised the ghosts of my friends from the walls of my mental home. For the first time, I was able to go without obsessing over the past and trying to map out my steps GameFAQs walkthrough style to find where my mistakes lay, where I went wrong. I struggle in finding ways to describe it other than it was as if a curse had been lifted from me. I may miss those people, but I have to acknowledge that they're gone and in the past now. I will have those memories as long as I'm able to cling to them. You can never go back to the past. I can't save them. Even if I could, I wouldn't know how. I've told you about my friends, and now you'll remember them, too. Dwelling on nostalgia isn't what they would have wanted of me. There is no point to it.
So I started making a video on a game called Pedigree Tactics, in hopes of one day being able to tell you what I hopefully have been able to in this video. That doesn't absolve Mega Man though, and it certainly doesn't absolve Mega Man X Dive.
I was able to go back and play through all of the Mega Man and Mega Man X games again. I went through the Zero games successfully where I'd always failed as a kid, and I played the ZX games for the first time. However, this time I wasn't doing it to disassociate into correlated memories, but to see if those memories were warranted in the first place. As any Mega Man fan will tell you, yeah, they still mostly hold up. There are parts of levels or control schemes that seem downright antiquated. There are levels that seem to be designed with cruelty and frustration as the objective. Random difficulty spikes inserted only to cause the player to spend more time on that level. While I still think X6 is better than most people give it credit for, I will co-sign with the masses that Blaze Heatnix's stage and that thing should have been cut from the game completely. X7 is an abomination and should be preserved only as an example of what not to do. I still think Mega Man 8 is the most fun of the classic series, and that's factoring in the bad voice acting. How can you hate on Grenade Man?
I'm Grenade Man!
Growing up, I didn't think bad video games existed. I thought that every game was perfectly accurate to its developers' wishes and intentions, that everyone had worked to the best of their abilities and that budgets and time were not a concern or constraint. It was a very naive way to look at games and media as a whole, but it seemed obvious to me. If something was bad, why would you bother to make it and release it? This instilled a sort of stubbornness in me though. There were not bugs or glitches or even bad game design as a concept that was familiar to me. Instead, I was simply doing something wrong. I was playing the game wrong and approaching its mechanics and systems in a way other than what was intended. The fault lay with me, not the developers. The first game to break me of this, by the way, was Army of Two for the Xbox 360. I never hear anyone talk about those games anymore, but unlike as you might with a beloved franchise, I do not question why.
My overall views for Mega Man are still overwhelmingly positive, warts and all. Am I going to bother with some of the wily levels or boss rushes at the ends of games, or am I simply going to decide my time is better off elsewhere and end the gaming session at that point? Whereas once I would have thought it was lame to consider the latter, now that's where I tend to lean. That's not a reflection of a quality of the game that's changed, but more so of me. And that's okay. Mega Man's strength has always come from his ability to change, literally and otherwise. Truly, I am envious of his ability to change color and sometimes hairstyle on the fly. The whole arc of Mega Man X is that you, as X, will grow stronger and more powerful over time. And that growth requires change, to adapt and form cohesion with the shifting timelines and gameplay styles, with the longtime fans and the gaming culture as a whole over time as they change and grow. Except Mega Man 11. Arguably 9 and 10 as well, but I just kind of feel like those were steps backwards. 10 less so of the bunch, but we'll talk about that later. But sooner than you might think. Still not this video though. Sorry if I got your hopes up.
One facet of Mega Man that I've come to terms with that I expect will generate me some backlash is that ACAP does include Mega Man X. Sorry buddy, Clanker Cops is where I draw the line.
Though their loss has changed me, it has not weakened me. What doesn't kill you, you know the saying.
I think of Amber, of Dylan, of Daniela every single day. Whenever I was younger, I would read that phrase in books and hear it on TV shows and in movies, and it was always presented as this giant gesture of love, a giant romantic thing. I think of you every day. But a day is a long time in brain hours. Sometimes it feels like a lot longer than dog years. I think of everyone every day. Almost every person I've ever met or have a distinguishing memory of, I think of them daily. people long gone, or even people next door. The Rolodex of my mind is always in motion, worried of what might happen if the wheels go unused and ungreased for too long.
Everything reminds me of someone, at some point. Sometimes it feels like my days are just slideshow sessions, a new picture popping up every time I touch something, a carousel of flashbacks timed in motion to my breathing and being. Sometimes the edges of the frames are jagged and I catch myself on them, the hem of my shirt or the edge of my sleeve, my own flesh snagged at the edge of my wrist if I try to flip through them too quickly or too slowly, too carelessly. But over time, those edges are worn down. Your reaction fades and then disappears. Even the most painful of memories over time gets sanded down and forced into uniform shapes so as not to disturb the flow of your everyday life. With this comes the internalization that your memories don't mean anything to anyone but yourself. And if that's so, then I intend to be selfish and to make the most of them. I will covet and hoard the things that only I can give value to. I always build things up in my head, and I always expect there to be a big, exciting climax. I thought there would be an obvious catalyst, a moment where things click or a light bulb appears over my head and illuminates itself. Instead, the days and moments have come quietly, unintrusively, leaves blowing placidly across the pavement. One day you catch your thoughts on that person a little less than the day before, and then the next day goes by, and at the end you realize you made it through without any snags. Maybe you don't even consciously recognize it until weeks or months later, when you pick up a game controller and the abyss opens up beneath you again. The feeling you thought you'd forgotten, or at least escaped for a while. You blink, and it's gone. Sometimes there's nothing there but yourself.
Sometimes, however, there's something bagel-shaped. A channel I've enjoyed watching grow is the Snack Sisters, two girls with great hair from the Midwest who sit in their car and try various snacks. Sometimes they even drag a microwave out to the car. It's a great bit. So while treasure diving in my own nostalgia, I remembered that most mornings during high school I would make myself a very particular breakfast, which I've now entitled Bagel Thing for marketing purposes. Of course, I couldn't miss this opportunity, so I had the Snack Sisters try it out, to see if my own memories live up to their own potential.
Listen, there's just nothing about this that sounds or looks appetizing.
I would advise you to try Bagel Thing on your own before forming any hard opinions. You can check out the full video on the Snack Sisters channel, which I've linked in the description below. So where does this leave us on Mega Man X Dive? What is the bottom line on the most recent entry in the beloved Rockman X series? Mega Man X Dive is, by some metrics, the most successful Mega Man game. Like, ever. It's not even close.
For years, Mega Man 2, 1988, was the darling of the series with about 1.5 million copies sold. Somehow, Mega Man 11, released in 2018, has outsold that with approximately 2.2 million copies sold. For comparison, within a month of release it was announced that X Dive Online had reached 1 million downloads. The latest hard figure put out by Capcom was in January of 2022, wherein they announced it had reached 8 million downloads. As another point of comparison, across almost 30 years, the Mega Man franchise as a whole has sold 44 million units. During 2020, the first year of operations, an 80% boost in Capcom's microtransaction revenue was directly attributed to the release of X Dive as well as Street Fighter Duel. A 4.7 billion yen, or $45 million USD, boost in revenue attributed foremost to Mega Man X Dive. If you look at reviews from other outlets, most have generally positive things to say about X Dive. Reading what others have said, it seems the fan base as a whole are pretty chill about it. So, am I wrong? Is it just that I overthought things, looked too closely at all the details? No, I don't think so. For once, I can't blame my problems here on overthinking. I think those people just more accurately see it for what it is and was meant to be, instead of what I still stubbornly hoped I'd be able to make it. Mega Man X Dive is a mobile game designed to be played on a flat glass rectangle with no buttons. It's designed to provide an on-demand Mega Man experience for those who want short sections of gameplay here and there between other parts of their life. It wasn't meant for longtime X fans to sit down with their controllers and dig into for hours at a time. It's more so a stopgap for brief periods in your life than an actual game for entertainment. Some of my issues can be toggled off. The auto-aim, for example, can be disabled completely, though this is hidden away in a menu that's only openable while you're actively in a mission. Nowhere in the game's menus or settings does it otherwise hint towards this, but they're there. It at least gives you these options to try and give a passing resemblance to the classic experience, though ultimately I do feel it falls short. Ultimately, the gaps between the formats of those two is simply too large, and it's stuck in this middle ground where you can see the potential, but there's no feasible way to reach it. I still firmly believe there is no virtue or excuse for the amount of menuing required, the amount of hoops you have to constantly jump through in the name of your power level. It's an aspect that easily could have been removed or renovated from the online version when offline released, but instead it was decided we still need to spend more time clicking than playing. I would highly advise you to use tools to help you skip a lot of that. There are plenty of cheats and mods online to help ease your time. For example, I played the Jacob's Ladder mode with the game running at 3 times normal speed, because I sure as hell don't have time for that otherwise. Strangely enough, the loading screens are also affected by this and loaded 3 times faster. There is time, passion, and adoration in almost every screen of X-Dive, and flipping through the art book you'll see the time and care put into making all the weapons and characters at least look kinda cool. Including limited time events and special collaborations, there are over 100 weapons designed for the game. I use the word over in the most bare-bones technical sense because there are 101 weapons in the game. Between Mega Busters, swords, missile launchers, machine guns, and more, there's clear effort into making all of them feel slightly unique and at least visually memorable. Their success there is for you to decide. The same goes for the character count, however, with over 140 playable characters. You will likely never touch more than 10 to 20% of them, yet all of them have unique models, animations, skills, and powers. Think of all the assets from the various games that have been faithfully recreated and modeled. Think of all the enemies that were given 3D forms for the first time. The majority of the levels in story mode are throwbacks to memorable stages from the various franchises, and even when I first played the online version, I was struck by how much care was given to make them feel like parts of those original universes. I'm not sure how much their passions seem to have mattered, though. In November 2025, it started circulating that Capcom Taiwan's internal development team, the crew who had worked for years to bring X-Dive to the world, were likely being disbanded.
For the years of effort and special events, for the thousands of man-hours spent on designing swimsuits for the female characters, and for all the blood, sweat, and tears put into bringing X-Dive to the world, I can't help but imagine what we could have gotten instead if all of that wasn't focused and spent on just making a gacha game.
The Mega Man community as a whole seems larger and stronger and more alive than ever. Am I the only one that's amazed megamanhomepage.net is still around? I remember visiting that back on dial-up internet and thinking it was the coolest thing. I remember telling one of my first girlfriends about Rockman Corner, and how I'd spent several days reading through all 2,000-ish posts up to that point in time. I'd never seen something like that online before, and was afraid I'd blink and miss it somehow. You can hop onto any of the dozens and dozens of Mega Man forums and find someone who's just as excited as you are about X5 Robot Master Duff McWhalen's level soundtrack being a remix of Mega Man X2's water level. You can also bitch at the same time about how they changed the name in later localized editions. When I asked one of the Mega Man Reddits about how they felt about X-Dive, I received far more impassioned replies than I had expected. There's a dedicated fan base for each and every one of the titles, even the not good ones. The upcoming release of Mega Man Dual Override, the first true new entry in the series in 9 years, has the internet aflush with new and old fans alike, teeming with excitement. There are Mega Man comics in circulation. The Ruby Spears cartoon series from the 90s just received the Blu-ray treatment, and Mega Man was featured in that Amazon Prime Secret Level series. It seems like the future is bright for the Blue Bomber. But still, part of me sees all of this as a result of the cash flow that X-Dive reportedly brought in for Capcom. Without our helmeted hero showing up alongside a big green number on their income statements, would anyone have bothered to care? X-Dive is the game shown as the face of the Mega Man series now, if you didn't know. Is this because we're getting to be the target demographic for nostalgia marketing? Or because people out there actually care about Mega Man and what he symbolizes, what he means to us? The reason I have these officially licensed and branded Mega Man large slippers is because Capcom is realizing there's money to be made. The officially licensed and branded Mega Man sneakers from the same product line at the same shop have the same image on both shoes, simply mirrored. The result shows how little care is actually taken when handling the brand. So is this revival for the fans, or the shareholders? No matter what the answer is, the old games will still be there for us to play and make video game essays about. Every day there seems to be a new fan game popping up on my YouTube feed. Every time I browse a Steam sale, I see a handful of games that obviously were made by people who have the same reverence for the series that I do. Mega Man's strength has always been to change and evolve, across generations of both video games and people. I think everyone who spent enough times with the game has at one point wanted to be Mega Man, or at least internalized some of the themes and lessons present, consciously or not. I've spent the last 3 years thinking about this, though from the toll it's taking on my mind it's felt like decades more.
Perhaps part of me never thought I would reach this point. Because there's no grand big moment, I feel like there's still unfinished business. But some things never end, I guess. They're always with you.
In late 2025, the format officially announced their reunion that had been hinted at for years. They released a new song, Holy Roller, and announced that their reunion album, Boycott Heaven, would release in January of 2026. The chorus for Holy Roller is simple but effective, with Nate Roos belting, "Holy Roller, don't go wasting all your time praying for a sign."
Fitting, isn't it?
One of the more questionable Mega Man media products to come out is the Mr. Mega Man manga series, wherein classic Mega Man is all grown up and working as a dentist of all things. I never imagined a Mega Man slice of life series as something I could care about, to see how Mega Man and all the robot masters have moved on with their lives. Cutman is, of course, a barber, because he has the clippers on his head. That's how you can tell he's a barber. Gutsman is an alcoholic. Topman is an influencer. Airman openly tells Mega Man he's considering suicide. "I'm literally just an industrial fan," he tells him over a couple frosted E-tanks. Me too, man. Me too. Most importantly, and also the most shocking, is that the world is at peace. That peace came from Dr. Light simply retiring on his 60th birthday, and Dr. Wily deciding that meant it was time to put their rivalry to rest. No more wars, no more plans of world domination. Just two old men who let go of the past and allowed the rest of the world to move on with them.
There is no grand conclusion I've come to, no big point. I'll always find new things to say about Mega Man. I'll always find new ways to word how that ties into my life and the people I've loved and lost and all the stories along the way that make it all worthwhile. Everything I've ever known is inside of me all the time, and when I don't know what to do, I write about it. Even if it doesn't always make sense to me, maybe it will to you. I think that might be it. I think that's probably all I have to say about it. I guess all that's left to do now is to live. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the sunshine.